Good morning. Today's message will come from the book of Philippians, chapter 4. Philippians, chapter 4. I'll read to you verses 9 through 13. 9 through 13. Philippians, chapter 4. Those things which you have both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do, and the God of peace shall be with you. But I rejoice in the Lord greatly, that now at your last your care of me hath flourished again, wherein you are also careful, but ye lack opportunity. Now that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am therewith to be content. For I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to be abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ, which strengthen me. I've taken our text this morning from our 11th verse. Now that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith be content. This morning we live in a world where there's so much going on. We live in a world where a lot of God's people are not focused on God. We live in a world where a lot of people are about, it's me, doing me. I mean, my way and my food and my thoughts and my ideas. And they'll even go to a step further to get bitter with you because they can't have it that way. We even go a step farther to get angry and cut off friendship and change their ways and change their looks because they can't have it their way. We have to understand today that God is a mighty good provider, and God wants us to treat ye one another as Christ has treated us. And we have to understand that God says in his word, I have no respectable person. This morning we have like to speak with you this morning a subject about, have I learned to be content in whatever state I'm in? Have I learned to be content whatever state I'm in? You know, we have to understand that when we go through things and we are not fully focused and trusting and dependent on God, it can change us. It can change our thoughts. It can change our ideas. It can change how we treat one another. It can change how we look, how we act. It can change us 100%. So this morning, God has given us a message today about, have I learned to be content? And not only learn to be content, but whatever state I'm in. Whatever state I'm in throughout the world. I've said it early and I say it again, that we are in a world right now where people are murmuring, people are complaining, people are disgruntled about any little thing. Things are setting them off, things that's out of their control. But God's saying today, I want you to be content in whatever state that you're in. Understanding you may not have no speaking those things. You may not have no saying those things, but those things that are out of our control, God said, I even want you to be content. And those things are out of your control. And the way we can be content is by praying to God. The way we can be content by giving it to God. This morning we want to speak briefly about being content and the dangers of not being content. I want you to log down this statement that I'm fit to say right now, and I really want you to put this in your heart and mind. We must be careful that we don't get so wrapped up in the blessing that we forget about the blesser. We have to be careful that we don't get so wrapped up in the blessings that we forget about the blesser. We just celebrated Thanksgiving this week, one of the greatest times to count our blessings, one of the greatest times to be thankful. And so many times we begin to just focus on the blessings and that we forget about the blesser. And when doing so, when we do this, we haven't learned to be content. You know, no matter I said earlier about my, me, no matter what I have in life, no matter how much I have stored up, no matter how much possessions or material things, two things I have to understand, that I can't take anything with me. Naked I came into this world, and naked I must believe. And the next thing I have to realize, that all that I do have and have stored up, if it had not been for God who's on my side, it's because of God we're able to have these things. Remember saying last week, the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof. We have to remove ourselves, the eyes and mind out of the way. Lean not into our own understanding. We talk about, because in doing so, we haven't learned to be content. When it's all about me, haven't learned to be content. My way, haven't learned to be content. As I said earlier, we have to be careful of being content and the dangers of not being content. Because if we haven't learned to be content, guess what happened? We return to our old habits. And what are old habits? I talked about a little bit on Thursday. Our old habits are running with the blessing. Running with the blessing. All about me and forgetting about God. All praise and glory. I done this. I did this. My double job. My checks I have coming in. My 40-hour work week. All that I'm doing. So when we look at all that we're doing, we're never going to be content about the things that God is doing in our life. We return to our old habits, running with the blessing. Church, and I must say that many of God's children are running with the blessing. Not meddling, just bringing God's word to you that God has given to me. Just this week, as I said, we had opportunity. We had opportunity to be around family. Had opportunity to be around friends, neighbors, even strangers. And as we celebrated Thanksgiving, we talked about the many things that we had to be thankful for. Wife and I woke up talking about the many things that we had to be thankful for. And I know that you trust that you all did the same thing. That's what Thanksgiving is. Every day is Thanksgiving, a day to be thankful. Talked about how far God has brought us. Talked about where God have us right now. Many things to be thankful for. And you and I, yourself, if you have your family over and your friends and strangers and perhaps neighbors, you pray and trust that you enjoyed a good meal, good food. I know we did. It was a great meal, and as we had that great food, we had talked about and endured a great family time. And then we were thankful for God and thankful for the many things that he had done for us. And we're taking time to give him praise. And I pray and trust you did as well, because if you didn't include God in those celebrations, guess what? It's just like we said, you're running with the blessing. God is too good for us not to stop and be thankful. We have to learn how to be content in all our ways. As children of God, we must be willing to follow the ways of God to receive our full blessing. What are the ways of God? The Bible says, be ye thankful. Be ye thankful in all things. Thank God for the little as well as the much. Thank God for your sick days as well as your good day. Thank God when you have a whole lot. Thank God when you just have a little bit, even run out. Go ahead and thank God, trusting and believing that God is going to provide. Children of God must be willing to follow the ways of God to receive our full blessing. Understanding our next word, and we're not content with what God is doing in our lives, we begin to look at. I want you to hear this, and we're not content with what God, I'm thankful, blessed. When we murmur and we complain, when we're not content in the things that God is doing in our life, guess what happened? We begin to look at what others have. We begin to look at other families, begin to look at other neighbors, begin to look at others. And therefore, when we begin to look out and see what other people have and how they have prospered, we send a signal of not being satisfied with what God is doing in my life. When I look out the window and I look out my door, drive down the street, and I see and talk about how others are blessed, it sends out a signal that perhaps maybe I'm not satisfied with what God is doing in my life. And when we lose focus on that, we lose sight of God. When we lose sight of God, we begin to lose our blessings. And we lose our blessings, guess what? We lose our faith. We begin to lose trust. And before you know it, we become discontent in our walks of life. Our sermon text today says, I will learn to be content in whatever state I'm in. And we begin to lose focus. We'll get to a point of not learning to be content. may not have everything that you like to have, may not have everything that you feel that you should have. Be thankful what God has blessed you with. May not be in the best condition or best health that you would like to be in, but be content in what little bit that God have left you with. May not have as much as you would like to have in your wallet, in your purse, or store it up, but be thankful for what little bit that God has given you. Through this message today, God is wanting us to receive all of his blessings. God don't want us missing any of his blessings. Just like God don't want us missing any of his blessing, God don't want us running with the blessing. I looked for a sermon I did, and I was talking about, where's the 9? God blessed 10 of them, and only 1 returned. God doesn't want us to be like that 9 that kept running with the blessing. God wants to be like that 1 that returned, stop, come back, and be thankful unto God. He is wanting us to enjoy this walk of life. He's wanting us to join this Christian life. God is wanting us to not run this race in vain, but to run this race full of joy. He wants to run this race with peace. He wants to run this race with love. So today, God is wanting to show us, and God is wanting you to know that what he done for Paul, he's willing to do for you and I. God's goodness doesn't run out. God's blessings doesn't run out. Scripture says his grace is sufficient. What he done for the disciples, he's still willing to do for us. What he done for the Hebrew boys, he's still willing to do for us. Even in the midst of this Thanksgiving celebration, in the midst of life, a lot of people are going through things. A lot of people endure with a lot of hardship. The devil is busy fixing one thing, something else break. The devil never stopped. That's his job, to and from. But God wants us to know that even in the midst of that, he still wants us to be content. Still want us to be content. But knowing that what he did for back then, he's still doing today. God is still in the blessing business, still able to open up doors, open up windows, still able to pour out blessings. We need to know that regardless what you're going through, in spite of, God is still in the blessing business. Not only that, I need you to say to yourself, every day I need you to say to yourself, as I said, a lot of times we murmur, a lot of times we complain, a lot of times that we feel that things are not going our way. We feel that the adversary is bothering us. We feel there's always trouble. I want you to understand today that regardless what you're going through, at what point of life you're in, the storms, the trials, the tribulation you're in, I want you to look yourself in the mirror and say to yourself, God is not finished with you yet. God is not finished with you yet. God is not finished with it yet. God is still working things out. God is still fixing things in our life. God is ready God is ready to do in your life what no other can do. Through your storms, through your trials and tribulation, whatever that you're going through, God is ready to show you what no other one can show you. God is ready to let you hear what no one else can tell you. God is ready to give us like no other can give us. For there's a certain fact that nobody can do us like Jesus. Nobody can do us like the Lord. But in his giving, he wants us to be ready for the blessing. In his giving, he wants us to grow and learn how to be content. So to be ready for the blessing, God is going to give us today the secret to being content. The secret to being content. Pastor, you say be content. Hope we have sermon says that have I learned to be content. Somebody may not know what content is. Somebody may not know how to be content. So today God has given us the information through his word today. And to be content, we have to understand that it is not a gift. To be content is not something that can be brought. To be content is not something that I can pass on to you. Be content is a lesson that has to be learned. To be content is a learning experience. Apostle Paul says, I've learned to be content. And so in learning is a work in progress. Every day working on it. A work in progress, not just an experience, but it is a working experience. It is a work in progress. Somebody maybe asking, Pastor, I still don't understand. What are you talking about, Pastor? Well, a work in progress, being content. Are you able to handle being hungry? You know how good it feels to be full. Are you able to handle not having anything? You know how it feels, that good feeling is to have overflow. You know how that good feeling is to have extra. Can you handle not having anything? Work in progress. Are you able to handle being empty, run out, not having enough? You know how it is to be content when you have enough. Can you truly handle? Have you become content in handling those storms, those trials, those tribulations, those bad things? But surely we know how to be content when it's at peace. We know how to be content after the storm has gone over. Well, have you been? Are you able to be content during the storm? And finally, have you learned to be content in where God have you at today? As I said earlier, a lot of people are murmuring and complaining. A lot of people are looking for a change. A lot of people are not happy with this, not happy with that. Can you be content in where God have you at today? May not be good. May not be what may not be good to you. May not be what you want it to be or think it should be. But can you be content in where God have you at today? Another question for you. Can you be content in what God is doing in your life right now? Routine. Can you be content in what God is doing in your life? Can you be content in people, problem, and circumstances? If it's not one thing, it's another. Can you be content in those things? Our three greatest fears, our three greatest things that we endure on earth: people, problem, and circumstances. Can you be content in those three? I hope so, because this is our lesson today. God said, I want you to learn how to be content. When we learn how to be content, God said windows will let up. When we learn to be content, doors will open. And not just open, they're opening and letting up so blessings can flow in. When we're willing to be content in all our ways. Apostle Paul said these words. And I want you to think upon these words and then ask yourself, can you truly say it today? Apostle Paul said, in all my ways, I have learned to be content. A work in progress every day. May not be the best day. May not feel your best. May not have what you want. May not look as good as you think. Feel as good as you think. May not be at that point where you thought you were, where you should be. Apostle Paul says, even in the midst of that, in all my ways, I have learned to be content. Church, as I read the Bible, Paul had some hard times. Paul had some hard days. But Paul also had some good days. Paul had some ups and downs. Paul went through some trials and tribulation. But through it all, Paul learned how to be content. Paul learned that being content was a work in progress. Paul learned that being content became at being at peace with himself. See, if you have at peace with yourself, then you have peace with God. When you have peace with God, then you have peace with others. Able to love ye one another. Able to forgive ye one another. Able to go and help one another. Only a man of peace and love of God can say, naked I came into this world, and naked shall I return. Being content knowing that I can't take anything with me. Being content knowing that this little bit that I have, that a blessing is a blessing till I share it with someone else. Being content with what I have, even though my table was filled with Thanksgiving meal, somebody didn't have a meal to eat. Being content that I'm able to share. Being content, I may not be able to cook it for him, but he'll go a few dollars, go and get you something. Being content, I've learned how to be content. Apostle Paul said, naked I came into this world, and naked shall I return, meaning I can't take anything with me. There's not going to be no U-Haul. There's not going to be any trailer behind the hearse. I have to leave behind everything that I've obtained in this world. Naked I came into this world, and naked shall I return. I say that again to say this because we live in a live world where a lot of people believe that the more I have, the better I am. The more I can accomplish, the better I am. The more I can save and put up in my bank account, the more I can put in my garage, the more I can put in storage, the better I am. Paul says, being content is not being able to store those things up. Paul became content in life, but it didn't come quickly. Paul became content. It didn't come overnight. Paul knew about having nothing, and Paul knew about having plenty. Paul knew about good, and Paul also knew about bad. So when did he know? How did he know? And the answer is here. Paul learned. As I told you, being content is a work in progress. It is a working experience. Everything that we go through is a working, learning experience. Paul learned. He wasn't taught by a teacher. He wasn't taught by a professor. He wasn't taught by no school or college. One of life's greatest lessons in the world is learning by experience. One of life's greatest lessons in the world is learning by experience, meaning going through something. If we're not willing to go through something, how can we tell somebody about how God brought us through, how God fixed things for us, how God turned it around, how God allowed that U-turn to lead him back to Christ? He learned through faith. He learned through love. And most importantly, he learned by trust and faith in God. May not be what you have, may not be going right well, but trust and believe that God is going to work things out. May be running short, but trust and believe that God is a provider. Trust and believe that God will supply all of our needs. Trust and believe that his grace is sufficient. Trust and believe that his grace doesn't run out. Remember, we sang a song that we come this far by faith. Faith and trust and believing in God, trusting in the Lord, trusting in his holy name. And the reason we trust him and the reason we sang that song with joy, because he never failed us yet. As Paul went through trials, as Paul went through tribulations, as he endured people, problems, and circumstances, same things that we endured, he matured in faith. He learned through his going through. He began to understand. Learning you're going through, meaning that God will put you in a position where you're able to understand things better by and by. That's what becoming content is. Through his ups and downs, he learned how to trust and depend on God. Through the storms, he learned how to have faith in God, that if God allowed me to get to this storm, God is going to bring me through this storm. If God allowed me to get to it, God is going to bring me through it. This is the secret to being content. Learning how to trust and depend on God. Not only in a few things, not only every now and then, but in all things. Not by reading about life, not by listening to what somebody else say, not about somebody else's life story, but by personal testimony, by what God has done for you in your life. I often tell the church that all of us should have a story on our heart, should be able to tell somebody else about what God has done for us, tell somebody else about what God brought you through. We all should have a story on our lives on what God has done for you, done for your family, done for others. Because surely you're praying for not just your family. Truly you're praying for not just your spouse, not just your children, but surely to be content, you're praying for all of God's people. Have a story on your heart. Do you have a story? There's a story. Somebody should have a story that I was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind into the world, but now I can see the things of God. Should have a story about how you were sinking, but now God has brought you to the top. I should have a story about how you was once down, but now you're up and about. You were sick, but now God got you feeling the best. You was broke, but now you're okay. You was hungry, but now you're full. Somebody should have a story other than you and I, to how you was in darkness, but now you can see the light. Have a story about how you was empty, didn't have much, but now God has allowed your cups, your pantry to run over. Talking about going through our walks of life. Through our walks of life, I've learned how to be content. The more we go through, we're learning to be content. Don't let it always be a trouble. Don't let it always be something to complain about. The more you go through, the more you're learning to be content. Knowing that it's no harm in going through. It's no harm of things breaking. It's no harm of getting sick. It's no harm of being without. It's no harm with having troubles in your life. It's no harm by being persecuted. Because I know that through those things, God is teaching me how to become content. This morning, church, I want you to know that God wants us to know to be content, not in a few things, not in some things, not every now and then, not when you're in the mood, not only when you have a lot, but God wants us to learn by experience, work in progress. God wants us to learn that in whatsoever state we are in, therewith be content. Because when we learn how to be content, then can we enjoy the many blessings of verse 13. Verse 13, and I close. Verse 13 says, I can do all things through Christ which strengthen me. When we learn how to be content, I can do all things through Christ which strengthen me. And this is a blessing of learning to be content. All things become possible. In times of hope, in times of strength, in times of storm, in times of trials, in times of tribulation, in times of directions in your life, whatever it may be, learning to be content will pay off, because through God, we can do all things through him which strengthen us. I pray and trust that you've gotten a thought out of God's lesson today. I pray and trust that something has been said that will help you turn or get on the right path or draw closer to God. I also trust that you will not only hide these words in your heart, but you will share this blessing with someone else, because a blessing is a blessing until you share it with someone else. I pray that God will continue to bless you this day, and not only this day, but the many days to come. And not only just you, but you and your family. His grace is sufficient. I pray and trust that you continue to learn, that this message today have taught you how to become content. Learning every day. I'm going through, and in my going through, I'm learning how to be content in all things. May God continue to bless you and your family. God bless you.